first, before I guess we introduce ourselves, we'll just talk a little bit about who we are as a company. As you were saying, we're both Crucible and the Open Meta Association. Who Crucible is this is a private company, a Web3 company focused on building software and tools to enable game developers to build for the open metaverse. But all of the technology that is built by Crucible is owned by Open Meta. And the Open Meta DAO is an open community. So all of the technology is owned by the community. Any requests for new products, features, etc., comes from the community. So the technology that we'll be presenting today, the Emergence SDK, is open technology, open for anybody to utilize. The community has been really great with helping us see what do they want next, etc., and helping to inform what the roadmap should be and what future tools they'd love to see for us to build. So who we are, I've got a number of the team members with us today, our developers. So if anyone wants to dive into some more of the technical questions, we've got Tom, our lead Unity developer, Chris, our lead Unreal developer, and Agu, our Web3 and blockchain architect. I'm Aleissia Laidacker. I lead up product and technology. Just a bit about myself, been, I guess, in the metaverse gaming industry for about 22 years or so. I led gameplay and AI at Ubisoft for a dozen years, led the SDK and developer experience teams at Magic Leap for 4 years, and have worked with a number of different Web3 as well as media groups building out metaverse experiences in the past. So what we're going to be diving into today is our product, the Emergence SDK. The way we like to explain it from an elevator pitch is Emergence is the easy on-ramp to the open metaverse, and so that developers can seamlessly integrate Web3 interoperability, utility with Web3 into their game engines easily. It is cross-chain compatible, cross-engine compatible, cross-platform compatible. And we'll be showing a little bit today what the functionalities are that are included with Emergence, what's coming up next, as well as showing a couple of the screenshots just from a developer experience side, how developers can get up and running with Emergence in a matter of minutes. And it really helps to like demystify a lot of the complexity that we know exists with Web3, especially developers that are working in Unity and Unreal, knowing how all the backend works, knowing how to build for Solidity, smart contracts. It's very daunting. So what we've essentially exposed to game developers is easy to use, essentially drag and drop prefabs or blueprints to get up and running, and then exposing and having easy abstraction APIs and tools so that developers can utilize a lot of what Web3 can provide to game developers. A little bit about Emergence and kind of like how we got to here. We launched our closed beta in March of last year, where we were working with a dozen game developers to get a lot of feedback on what they wanted to see in an SDK like this. We launched our open beta last September to the community. And we have been live on the Unreal Marketplace since March 1st of this year, and we've gotten over 30,000 downloads from developers since it launched on the Unreal Marketplace. Gotten a lot of great feedback. It's really been fun working with the community and building out small tools that we've already released to the community since launching, and being very transparent about some of the future larger products that we're working on that the community's been asking for. We're an official verified solutions partner with Unity. We are right now in the process of going through all the validation testing with them and should be launching on the new Unity Web3 Marketplace, hopefully in the coming weeks. So that'll be great to get to really work closer with the Unity developer community as well with this. So we'll be diving into high-level overview of the features. If anybody has questions, maybe someone can call it out. I can't see the questions right now, so feel free to interrupt me at any point, but we'll give a high-level overview of the features, then dive into some of the more specifics about what can be done, what are some use cases, and then ending with what's coming next, essentially, for Emergence. So we like to describe Emergence as 4 core areas of focus for the product. The first aspect is what we call our EVM library. So essentially Emergence supports so that any developer can integrate the Emergence blueprint or Emergence prefab in the case for Unity, so that then any of their users can connect their wallet through a QR code. What we've got set up is full EVM compatibility, so that as a developer, if you want to be building on Polygon, if you want to be building on Ethereum or anything that is EVM compatible, it's a really easy plugin where you can update to connect to any of these EVM compatible networks. We're also working with additional new chains that are very focused on the open metaverse. Lamina One has been one of our close partners, and once this gets released soon, or once it gets announced very soon, we're their preferred SDK partner, so that any developer who may want to start building for Lamina One can easily bring Emergence into their game world, choose Lamina One from the dropdown, and then start interacting and reading and writing back to any of the content that exists on the Lamina One blockchain. We currently support ready-to-use standards like ERC20, ERC721, though we got some great feedback from the last session around other types of ERC standards to follow, which we'll be looking into as well. And essentially, the EVM library acts as a global database with universal authentication. So essentially, like all of the data, right, that is being created for a game developer's game world isn't necessarily owned by any single entity. That's really like kind of the why. Why would you want to be like coming into the Web3 side? It's so that your users own their data. Your users really are the ones that are owning it, and not one specific game or one company. The second aspect of our product that we'll be diving into is the inventory service, which I feel there's probably some good overlap with what this Metaverse Standards group is all about. And with our inventory service, we realized that we got a lot of great feedback from developers when they said, all right, let's start embracing Web3 and NFTs. And the first bit of feedback that they got was, all right, we can connect a user's wallet, but we have no clue what any of these objects are for. Are they avatars? Are they weapons? Are they pieces of clothing? Are they props? And it was a really great point, because a lot of the times NFT collections are built with preset metadata that's tied to it. But as a game developer, the design of that NFT may not have been what they want to actually utilize it for. So this is where we've built a system that we call the dynamic metadata functionality, so that game developers can treat NFTs much like just a game object. I always tell game developers, consider an NFT as just a decentralized game object. And through the dynamic metadata system, this is a way so that game developers can read and write back to these game objects with the information that is valuable for them. We're really keen to work more with this community and other standards communities as well, because when we think about these decentralized game objects, what's really important for interoperability is having standards around how should these templates be made for the dynamic metadata. So for example, let's say you want a prop to be used across different game worlds, and maybe the action from one game world to have consequence in a different game world. There needs to be standards that are set around the templated data. So what we have today is, I'll say, relatively basic, but it's a way for us to add in categorization information to know what type of NFT exist in a user's wallet. So a developer can then filter out and say, give me everything of type clothing, give me everything of type props, etc. But we're really keen to work more with our community and this community to build upon the standards of that data as we think about interoperability of objects across game worlds. But what we have today is essentially that backend infrastructure, and it's been fun seeing how game devs are using it so that they can read and write back to this dynamic metadata system that is tied to NFTs. The third and fourth area of our product is what we call our persona system and our avatar system. I know there is a lot of interoperable avatar kind of initiatives and products that are out there. We're working as well with that working group session with the Metaverse Standards Group. How we explain the persona and avatar system is essentially once the user logs in, scans the QR code, connects their wallet, they're prompted with the ability to create their persona, so essentially a digital identity. They could fill in their name, profile, bio, etc. But then they can see if they have any 3D compatible avatars that exist inside of their wallet. And if they do, then they can connect that avatar to their persona so that every time they bring their persona into any game world, no matter which engine, platform, etc., the avatars will load in seamlessly. And we'll dive more into this, but essentially what we're providing to the developer is all that workflow that kind of automates the loading, the retargeting, etc., for the avatar to be able to be functional inside that game world. Where we're at today with this is we support VRM type avatars, but we are working closely with a number of different groups. We're part of the NVIDIA Inception program, so working on supporting USD type file formats, working on supporting GLB and GLTF type file formats, and working as well with a number of different collections out there so that they seamlessly can have their collections available for users and developers to bring into their game worlds. So this is just a bit of a brief overview of like what some of the UI looks like. So from a developer's perspective, you would essentially bring in just one blueprint, the Emergence singleton blueprint into your game world, or in the case for Unity, it's just the Emergence prefab. And then the user would get prompted with this UI so that they can scan their QR code, create their persona, or load in their persona of choice. All of this UI is customizable to the developer. We just give some initial schemas so that if devs don't want to do anything themselves, they can use our built-in UI, but all of this is customizable to developers, which we've seen quite a number of developers obviously customize this to their login page. And essentially what we're providing to developers, and probably the two biggest buzzwords that exist in our industry right now, is we're really focused on interoperability. And I think the bit that I'm personally excited about is not necessarily just the avatar side. Yes, lots of work being done for the side of interoperable avatars, which is great, but the interoperability of inventory items, any other types of NFTs or decentralized game objects, that's the bit that I'm most excited about. And I think especially with this group, helping to provide where are the standards going to go for this. It's going to be really exciting for game developers, and we've just got an initial set of tools for developers to use today to see how they're thinking about interoperability for game objects, and then which ties in directly to utility. So giving access to the developers, the storage capabilities, the information that we're providing, like the categorizations, et cetera, and basically the templates so that game developers can really embrace Web3 and NFTs, but look at it as really a game object that they can use in their games. Yeah, so this is just a bit of a recap, but today, if anyone's interested in diving into Emergence, like we said, we provide, we've got the plugins for both Unity and Unreal. built-in UI, there's a number of documents, tutorials, and then full samples, sample projects that we'll show a bit of. Oh, an echo. Okay. Sample projects as well, so that developers can get up and running for free and openly and see how they can use it. So before I dive into any videos and details, any questions yet? Great start. Okay, cool. Thank you. So this is just a demo video inside our demo game world that shows some of this working. Like we said, this is the built-in UI where the user's prompted. They can load in their persona of choice. Here we made a couple of worlds so that we can show a bit of our dynamic metadata in action. We took a number of NFTs and added some specific information to them. So just as an example, we filtered out so that only show NFTs of type wearable inside this game room. I'm going to keep clicking. I have questions about security aspects. Should we do this now? Do we want to answer any of the security now or maybe at the end?
Yeah, let's hold the security aspects question to the end.
Okay, great.
Do the rest of the deck. Thank you.
Cool. And then here, this is just an example so game devs can see like, well, how could I utilize this? Maybe you've got like a little shop area or something like this and see what the user owns that's of type clothing. Maybe you want to allow them to then like bring it into the game world. Just skip this a little bit, but we see sunglasses. We actually added some information in our dynamic metadata about, well, how is this wearable used? So this is of type sunglasses, so we know how to attach it to the avatar. Here's what we call like our kind of weapons room. So you can see, you know, filter out maybe what are some of the weapons that the user has inside of their wallet. In the case for this, whoops, crap, sorry. Let me go back to this. Here we'll see that we've added some dynamic metadata around where should it be attached to the user when they like load it up? Yes, no, maybe which hand should it be loaded on? Again, all of this is like the developer can see what do they want to actually utilize from the dynamic metadata or not. Another example where this is a trading NPC, so we've got the smart contracts all in like the back end that the game devs can use if they want to actually have live trading inside of their game world. And then the last little example down here that I like showing to game devs is NFTs obviously is not just PFPs and avatars. Someone's chatting. Okay. But music as well, I think is obviously like a huge area in the Web3 space. So we've made this kind of example of, say, a jukebox. So maybe a game dev wants to be able to bring in their NFTs that they own and have like a jukebox that
YZSNOOP.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of Snoop Dogg playing, but all of this is loaded in from the blockchain. So just a couple of examples that shows like a very simple setup, but how game devs can start thinking about utilizing NFTs in their game world, both what the user already owns and or what maybe the game developer has created for collections of their own inside a game world. So we'll dive a bit into how would a developer get started with this, like what do we provide? We've got full developer documentation. We've actually got a better, easy to remember website, which is emergence.site that you can go to. All of the downloads are available there. Again, engine support for Unreal, it's 4.2.6 up to 5.1. I guess the latest version of Unreal we support, as well as Unity that'll be coming soon. From a developer's perspective, if they just want to get started with the persona system, the QR login, the ability to then like read, write to different smart contracts, etc., allow their users to bring in like avatars. It's really as easy as bringing in this one blueprint from a developer side to be able to launch the Emergence server and obviously kill it when needed. From the Unity side, it's really just the one prefab to bring into your game world. At this point, the developer is, the user is presented with all of this inside their game world. If they want to get started with some of the more complex features or more advanced features, such as being able to, how do you read and write back to a smart contract? How do you want to utilize the dynamic metadata? Then we've got a sample project that is available. I'll share these slides as well after. So if anyone is keen to like share this with your developers, creators, community, it's kind of detailed where it just shows like where to go on our dev doc site. But inside our sample project, we've got all of these examples that are here. And let's say as a user or a developer, you don't own any interoperable avatars yet. We've got a station where a developer can actually go and mint their first avatar so they can really go through the workflow from A to Z themselves and see everything working. All these stations you could click on and then copy paste the blueprints into your game world. Same thing for the Unity sample project. So when it comes to interacting with smart contracts, I'll show, I think, the blueprint maybe first, but from the blueprint side, it's really about being able to bring in what your contract address, what your contract address is and the ABI for that smart contract. And we explain a lot of this stuff on our developer website. We're also building a tool actively right now to be able to create your own smart contracts, because we know there are some tools out there like OpenZeppelin, but many of the developers have come to us going, this is exciting. What's a smart contract? So we are actively building the tools that's more geared towards game devs and the open metaverse community, while thinking about the standards for the dynamic meta template. So let's say when a developer wants to build their own smart contract, they can right off the bat start flagging things saying, yes, this is an avatar, or yes, this is like a collection that's prop specific, and adding any of the metadata that's tied to that. But from a blueprint side, it's essentially once you add these smart contracts and ABI, it'll auto-populate any of the methods that exist inside the smart contract. If there's, for example, a mint function, there's a increased count function, all of this will get updated automatically so that it really looks like for the developer that they're just interacting with like a simple function. Same thing from the right side, the contract address and then the method, and they'll be able to like write back to any smart contract through the blueprints. And just coming back a little bit, like we've worked with developers where it's like, well, why would you want to do this, right? Like, what are some use cases in your game world? We've got some examples of maybe you want to provide access to an area in your game world. I think we've seen that as a very common thing with NFTs. You own this NFT, great, you have access to this new game world, right? It can also be a way to authenticate access to specific game assets on, sorry, I need to take a sip of water. You could also authenticate to see if you want to provide them with game assets and, you know, award users with trophies, badges, etc., that then they own, and then, you know, see like, oh, did you win this epic battle? Great. Okay, we can actually validate all of that. Like, this is you. We've also seen a lot of developers utilizing like ERC20s as game currency, and we just provide a lot of these examples from the APIs as well as smart contracts to devs to utilize in their game world. Question: are you using any standards for metadata, particularly attachment points? amazing question. And I will say that is in part why we are here. I should have prefaced at the beginning that Matt White, who I think was originally running this group as well, I think he's with the Linux Foundation group. Him and I have been chatting since mid last year, where last year I had given him a demo of what we were building and had showed him what we wanted to do with the dynamic metadata, or what we had already built with the dynamic metadata, saying, here's a great system, or I think a great system, where game devs can read and write back to metadata, where maybe it wasn't designed into the metadata from the beginning. But if we think about interoperability, there needs to be standards. And I told them, like, right now, we are just exposing to devs a very simplistic schema, so really around like the categorization, and we put in some information like, if it's a weapon, do you want to attach this to a specific hand or joint or something like that? But I'm saying, like, we shouldn't be the ones that are building this in any way, and this is where we would love to see from this community, what do we think the schema template standard should be? We've got some ideas and very happy to share like what this schema is that we've put together. And we've been getting feedback from our community, but essentially we're at the point where we've got some things in and we've told the dev community the template and schema is very much in an experimental phase and very subject to change. And I would love for like a group like this to say, this is the schema that we want to see. And if that's where we come together as a community, amazing, then we can implement that, and would love to dive in with all of y'all as well to talk even about like the permissions around that, right? Because some of our developers have said, we want to have like a standard, but we also want to have a standard where maybe there's a section that's like game only, or maybe publisher only, or IP only, like sections that can be updated. So I guess long answer to your question, no, there isn't any official standard today, but I'm hoping that that can come out of groups like this, if that answers your question. Cool. So moving forward, yeah, I think I already mentioned this, how we, with the dynamic metadata, we support ERC 721 and 1155s. We're providing a lot of like use cases to the community, but again, very subject to change, very, very subject to change. And hopefully this group can be one of the ones that help come up with what that standard should be. This is, again, I had this in the video, but this is some of the UI we provide to developers. Doesn't look super pretty, and kind of on purpose. We know that developers just are probably going to completely reskin this, but we're providing here, at least on the right side, you can see what was in the built-in metadata, but as well as the information that we expose through the dynamic metadata. And this, again, completely subject to change, but it has been fun to see how a few devs have kind of like come together and they're like coming up with a bit of their own standards just to see how interoperability can work, and coming up with fun use cases of how, you know, maybe you're in one game world, you collect a certain thing or you get a certain badge, and then another group checks to see that and then can read and write and have like consequence inside their game world for that as well. So in terms of what's next on the inventory service, because this is something that, especially with this group, I'm really excited about, and I think there's huge potential. One is our first version that we built was all based off of the Rarible API and indexer technology that's out there, which has been great for a first pass, but Rarible is limited to the number of chains that are supported. So the last 2 months we've been working on our own custom indexer, our own custom indexer, so that one, we can expose things through the indexer filter out information that the community and especially devs in the open metaverse space are really interested in. We're also working with a number of chains. I mentioned Lamina One, but there's a few others that are out there that are super keen to work with us so that this indexer supports a number of different chains that are focused on the open metaverse space. AI, obviously, massive hot topic for everyone today, but we've been doing a lot of really fun experiments with GPT-4, ChatGPT, as I'm sure everybody is here. But with the data that we're populating through the custom indexer, it's really great to think of how to utilize AI to get a lot of that first pass categorization out there, seeing what types of data already exist in collections, so that then we can come back to groups like all of y'all and provide some information about what we've gathered through our analysis to say, I don't know, I'll just give a random example, but if we're looking at wearables, this is the common categories that we're seeing with a lot of the collections that are out there, so that we can take that information and like keep it in mind while we're coming up with those schema templates. So we are actively working on that right now. As I said, really hoping to work with this group as well as like the Linux Foundation and other standards group to hopefully come up with maybe not the full set of standards, but build upon what we have and provide this to the community to see more and more interesting use cases. And yeah. Final bits, avatar system. I mentioned, and I know this is probably more for the other working group, but we support VRMs today, but working with Linux Foundation, working with a number of different groups. Tony from Lamina One is great since he's like godfather of GLTTF and such, but looking at how to support different types of file formats for avatars. And we're just working on a lot of the backend plugins and workflows so developers don't have to worry about like, how does all of this load into their game worlds? To be honest, there's a whole other discussion on the avatar side that falls into standards and as well, because when we look at data storage for Web3, there's examples like IPFS and Arweave that are out there. But from a game dev perspective, right? Game devs, especially when we think about, well, how are assets going to load on mobile versus like a high-end PC, we may want to have more complex data structures and templates to be able to like have access to different variations of those models. Either that or use AI to do it all automatically for us, but I feel like we're not quite there yet. So lots of work being done here. This just shows a little bit, like, again, from the blueprint side, like how a developer can like bring in just a few of these blueprints to get all the dynamic avatars working in game. We built the VRM plugin for Unreal. And just to say that with Unity and VRMs, there's a lot of plugins that do like all the loading automatically. But on the Unreal side, we learned the hard way that there isn't really much out there for Unreal. There's Chris can tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe, is it VRM for you, Chris?
Yes, VRM for you. Yeah,
VRM for you. However, that doesn't do anything for being able to load content like dynamically. That plugin is really based off of if you've already got like all the file assets in your game world. So we built this plugin so that if any Unreal developer wants to utilize VRMs and bring them in dynamically, we've got the plugins that are open and readily available. So we've actually had a lot of devs use Emergence where they're like, not sure about the Web3 part stuff yet, but we're going to use your plugin just for the dynamic loading of VRMs. So that's been fun to see. And final slide of what's next, because I see there's a few questions. There's a lot. And again, I'll share this with everybody here. A lot of this stuff already came out. Originally, when we launched last year, our EVM library was built as a local EVM setup, which is great for multiplayer, let's say multiplayer games, etc., where they want to have things on their own server. But we've also launched the EVM cloud. So let's say you're a game dev and you don't want to have like a local server set up. We've got the EVM cloud compatibility as well, launching on the Unity marketplace soon. Our support for Mac is coming very soon. And one of the things that I know I really keep pushing for is support on the Unity side for WebGL. We're planning this for later this year, specifically because Unity is going to be launching their new version. I believe it's this summer, where they're bringing back Unity WebGL support for mobile, which will be great. And we want to like target to have the Emergence SDK working with that version of Unity, so that a lot of the game devs who do want to like embrace Web3 and build for mobile can leverage that and kind of like skirt around the App Store restrictions by being able to have more of a browser-based mobile experience working. We've got Lamina 1 integration already going, and I believe those announcements and everything will be coming soon. A big part, and maybe Tom or any of the gang, if you want to, or Agu, chat about this a little bit, is we know one of the hard bits for embracing Web3 from a developer and user side is that, let's say whenever a write transaction happens, there are gas fees. And even from a user's perspective, if they have to like open up their wallet and like acknowledge every single transaction every time, that's like a pain in the ass. So we're working on a number of features to help alleviate that. One, lazy minting. So let's say as a developer, you want to wait a little bit and, you know, kind of store up a few of those transactions and do like one transaction later on, you can. We're looking at sponsored transactions as well. So let's say as a developer, you don't want your users to be paying for anything, or maybe vice versa. We're building in the functionality so developers can choose if they want to sponsor for gas fees, etc. Looking at batch transactions as well. But yeah, Agu, Tom, do you want to add in anything there?
Yeah, sure. I would just add a little bit of emphasis on the lazy minting feature. It's pretty great because it also enables for authentication to happen with other methods, like traditional Web2 methods, instead of you having to own a wallet, setting up the seed phrase and everything. We can support federated login systems too, like Google, Facebook, and so on. So this enables for developers to store the game assets on a traditional database, and also giving the user to mint the items whenever they want to in the future. So it makes it pretty frictionless.
Yep. So yeah, it's just a lot of feedback we've got from devs where we're just continually trying to see how do we alleviate a lot of that friction with Web3 onboarding, as well as from a login side. We've got a few identity partners, but none of it's public yet, but looking at a few identity partners to integrate with so that if users don't have wallets, they can still utilize all this. And Web3 is just kind of in the back end side of things. Another group we're working with is Saga. If y'all haven't heard about them, I would definitely recommend checking them out. I believe it's saga.xyz. And it's a little bit related even to like our collection smart contract creation tool, where developers have come to us saying like, we don't know what a smart contract is. Like, how do we build a collection? How do we build a smart contract? So we've got the easy to use tool, but then we also get developers saying, well, which blockchain should I choose? Like, which ones are out there? Like, why is one better than the other? And Saga, essentially what I like about what they're building is it's a way so that any developer, or hell, if you want to just be a user and do this yourself, you can spin up your own blockchain, set all of your own rules around it. And in terms of like their payment and side, you can think of it almost like if your company has your own AWS or whatnot thing set up, so it's just a monthly fee. But then once you've got it set up, it means that transaction fees and gas fees, like they're free. So we'll be integrating that as well. So developers like are aware that this exists and can see if that is more of a valid choice for them versus building for Polygon or Ethereum or any EVM compatible chain that's out there. But yeah, I think we only have a few minutes left. So I want to make sure we have time for questions. If you'd like to contact us, and maybe anyone can put these in the chat. Here, I'll actually come back. You can join our Discord, discord.gg/openmeta.